Now that we're in October, I'm going to be revisiting horror movies from the 80s. This week, I want to revisit one of my favorite vampire movies ever. That's right, I'm talking about The Lost Boys from 1987. Not only is it one of my favorites, but I also think it's one of the best vampire movies ever made. Let's take a look back at this horror classic on the next Back to the Future.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey there, movie lovers. Dwin here to take you back to when some of the greatest movies you know and love first opened at the theater. If you're a fan of movies from the 80s, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below to help grow this channel. Now, vampire movies can be tricky to do right. It's really easy to screw it up and have it come across as cheesy. Or you could be like director Joel Schumacher and put a bunch of hot young Hollywood actors in your movie and give them a script they can sink their teeth into. It's night on the boardwalk in a little seaside town called Santa Carla, where we see David, played by Keifer Sutherland, and his gang of misfits starting trouble with a couple on the carousel until a security guard grabs him in a chokehold and tells him to stay off the boardwalk. Now, David just smiles and leaves, but you could tell he wasn't going to let it slide that dude put hands on him. Later that night, as the boardwalk shuts down, that same security guard is walking to his car and something flies down towards him and scoops him up before he can get in his car. You can't see anything, but you know it was David. Now, what I always thought was funny about this scene is the grip that guy had on the door handle, and it ripped the entire door off as he's pulled into the air. We get our first look at Santa Carla in the light of day as Lucy, a recently divorced mom from Phoenix, moves her two sons, Michael and Sam, and their badass dog Nanook back to Santa Carla to live with her dad. On their way into town, they pass the giant Welcome to Santa Carla billboard with Murder Capital of the World spray painted on the back. That's a giant red flag. Now, while the opening credits play, you get a montage of the town and a look at all the kinds of people living there. The hair and clothing of the people just screams 1980s. One person is even holding and licking a rat on the mouth. What the hell is going on in this town? Also, there seems to be a decent population of surf Nazis. Don't know what a surf Nazi is? Google it. They settle in at Grandpa's house and the boys find out how weird he is. The house is literally filled with all kinds of taxidermied animals, but no TV in sight. And meanwhile, their mom gets a job at a local video store owned by a guy named Max. Now, you can tell there's something off about this guy, but you can't put your finger on it. He just comes off a bit weird. And when David and his gang walk into Max's store, he tells them to leave, and they actually do without any pushback. Then we have square-jawed Jason Patric playing older brother Michael, while Corey Haim, one of the famous 80s Coreys, plays the younger brother Sam. Together, they decide to take in the local entertainment at the beach, where there's a concert going on that night with this weird shirtless muscle-bound dude that sings and plays saxophone. Now, from the crowd gathered, he looks to be pretty popular. But I really never got this scene. It just seems so odd. But this is where Michael spots Star, played by Jamie Gertz, and her sidekick, a creepy little kid named Laddie. They make a little eye contact back and forth until she scurries off and Michael follows her like a lost puppy. Sam decides he doesn't want to follow Michael's hormones and ducks into the local comic book shop instead. And it's here that cinematic history is made as the two Coreys come face to face for the first time in the same movie. That's right, Corey Haim meets Corey Feldman. Now, for those of you too young to remember, these two guys were two of the biggest child actors back then. The Lost Boys was just the first movie they did together. They would go on to do a total of 9 movies and a reality TV show. Maybe we'll cover some of those movies in later episodes? I don't know. The Lost Boys was the best movie they did together. Anyways, back to the comic shop. It's a family-owned business where the parents are hippies passed out behind the counter the whole time. The shop is actually run by their sons, Edgar and Alan Frog, who are very interested in Sam when he comes in. It's obvious he's not a local because of the way he's dressed, and they peg him for a fashion victim almost immediately. They talk comics for a few minutes, and the Frog brothers give him a comic to read titled Vampires Everywhere. Then Michael catches up to Star, only for David and gang to show up and ruin his moment with her. There's not much he can do but just stand there with his sad puppy dog eyes and watch her ride off with him. Sam returns to the comic shop, and this time the Frog Brothers give him another vampire comic. When Sam tells them that he doesn't like horror comics, they tell him it's more of a survival guide and it could save his life. They show him their phone number on the back and tell him to pray he never needs to call them. Just a wee bit of foreshadowing. Michael runs into Star again on the boardwalk, and this time they actually get to chat and introduce themselves. But once again, David shows up and ruins Michael's night. He invites Michael to follow them on his motorcycle, and again, like a puppy dog, he goes just so he can follow Star. They lead him to some cliffs where they have their hidden hideout in a cave on the beach. They hang out and eat some Chinese food, and then David starts playing mind games with Michael to make him think he's eating maggots. Now I remember watching this scene in the theater, it was gross. Of course it's just a trick and Michael falls for it twice because he's really not the brightest bulb. Then David brings out a wine bottle and asks Michael to join them by taking a drink. He's actually honest about it being blood, but Michael's not falling for that mind trick again, and he drinks it thinking it's actually wine. So basically, drinking the blood was step one to join their gang. The guys all get on their motorcycles and ride out to a bridge where they all jump off and hang from some bars below. Michael is the last one standing until David convinces him to come on down. Like a good puppy dog, he does as he's told and puts his life in danger by hanging from the bars under the bridge while a train passes over them. One by one they let go and fall into the foggy abyss. Michael freaks out and is struggling to hang on until he eventually falls as well. When he falls into the fog, he ends up back in his bed waking up the next afternoon. Suddenly, light bothers his eyes and he's having weird hunger pains. With Grandpa out on a date and Lucy working, the boys are left home alone. Sam is taking a bubble bath upstairs while Nanook sits next to the tub. But those hunger pains are starting to get to Michael and he starts to head upstairs to Sam. Michael opens the door just as Sam ducks his head underwater, and Nanook, sensing danger from Michael, growls and leaps, knocking him out of the room and down the stairs. Then when Sam comes up for air, he hears the commotion and goes to investigate, where he finds Michael holding his bloody hand. As Michael explains that Nanook was only protecting him, Sam's jaw drops as he looks past Michael and sees that his reflection in the mirror is fading. All of a sudden, you can see the dots connecting in his brain.
You're creature of the night, Michael. Just like out of a comic book. You're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. Oh, you wait till Mom finds out, buddy.
Michael is able to convince Sam that he needs to help him to fight this. So Sam calls the Frog Brothers, and they explain that in order to save Michael, they will need to kill the head vampire. They quickly assume that means Max. In the meantime, Michael rushes back to the cave to confront David, but he finds Star instead. And when he pleads with her for answers, she just ignores him and takes him for a little vampire lovin'. Remember when I said Michael is just a puppy dog? Well, this proves it. Once she makes a move on him, he just stops asking questions and jumps in the sack. Lucy invites Max over for dinner, and this gives Sam the opportunity to bring the Frog Brothers to dinner as well, so they can test their theory that Max is indeed the head vampire. But Michael's not sticking around for dinner, so he runs into Max as he's leaving and invites Max in. He tracks down David at the boardwalk, demanding to know where Star is. David pretty much says, if you ever want to see Star again, you'll come with us right now. And just like every time before, Michael follows along. This time though, David takes him to a beach area where some surf Nazis are having a big bonfire. This is a big moment in the movie. It's the first time we get to see them in their full vampire mode, fangs and all. And it only took a little over an hour before you see them, but it was worth the wait. David and his gang kill all of the surf Nazis and tosses them on the bonfire while David fights the urge to join in. And afterwards, David explains that Michael is just like them and he needs to feed. Since Max passed their vampire test, they move on to their next target, David. Sam and Michael, along with the Frog Brothers, hatch a plan to go to the cave so that Michael can rescue Star and Laddie, while the Frog Brothers and Sam kill David while he sleeps during the day. Now this plan actually pretty much goes as they planned, mostly. Michael gets Star and Laddie out of the cave and back to the car, while the others track down the sleeping vampires. And now here's something that stands out in this movie, probably above all other vampire movies you've ever seen. You get a really good look at their gross-ass vampire feet as they hang upside down sleeping. Look at those little piggies. It's a podiatrist's nightmare. Since Marco is the first one they can reach, he takes a wooden stick right through the heart and screams like a bitch. Of course, all the vampires wake up and there's blood raining down all over the place. They freak out and haul ass out of the cave and back to the car, and since it's daylight, the vampires can't follow them. Now they have to move on to plan B, which is to play defense. They know David is going to be coming after them, so it's time to fortify the house. And luckily, Lucy has a dinner date at Max's, and Grandpa is also out on a date. Before dark, they steal some holy water from a church and get their hands on a bunch of garlic. They lock the doors and windows and fill the bathtub up and dump holy water and garlic in there. And as an added precaution, they fill water guns with holy water to go along with their supply of wooden stakes. Vampire number 1 crashes through the fireplace and attacks Michael and Sam. Meanwhile, vampire number 2 is upstairs attacking the Fogg brothers in the bathroom. They splash holy water in his face from the tub, but all it does is piss him off. Before he can kill them, in comes Nanook once again to save the day. He lunges and knocks him into the tub. And now I will say, watching him boil in the holy water was one of the coolest scenes in the movie. The makeup effects here were amazing. So he dies in the tub, and naturally the water turns red with blood. And I guess a side effect of killing a vampire in your tub is that it's really hard on your plumbing, because suddenly all of the pipes in the house start shaking and spewing bloody water everywhere. Back downstairs, Sam takes out the other vampire with a bow and arrow. The impact of the arrow through his chest sends him backwards so that the arrow goes into the stereo components and basically electrocutes him. He becomes a human sparkler until finally his head and body explode.
Death by stereo.
That leaves only David left. It's finally a one-on-one matchup between him and Michael. They both vamp out and start floating in the air, fighting, but the fight doesn't last long thanks to Grandpa's hobby. There are sharp horns everywhere in the house. Michael finally wins by throwing David onto some big antlers that go right through his heart. Everyone gathers downstairs to celebrate their victory, but it's a little premature. Turns out nothing changed. David wasn't the head vampire after all. In a moment of perfect timing, Lucy and Max show up. Lucy is questioning why the house is utterly destroyed, but Max doesn't seem to be fazed at all. He looks around and walks into the other room where David is, and then he comes back to talk to Lucy. And this is where we're hit with the big twist that we pretty much kind of knew was coming all along. Max is the head vampire. The Frog brothers and Sam are confused as he passed their test. He explains that all that stuff doesn't work on a vampire once you invite him into your home. You really have to read the fine print on these rules, boys. Turns out old Max just wanted Lucy to be a mother to David and the other boys. Isn't that sweet? He's just a family man at heart. And when Max shows his true vamp face, Michael tries to attack him, but he's too powerful and swats him away like a fly. Sam, bless his little heart, tries next, only to get put in a headlock and used as leverage for Lucy to submit to Max. And just as Max is about to bite Lucy, you hear a noise outside, and suddenly a truck comes busting through the wall. It's Grandpa. He has a big-ass wooden pole with a sharp point mounted on his hood. The pole flies and hits Max in the chest, driving him back into the fireplace, where he explodes in a ball of flame. Everyone is safe, all of the vampires are dead, and Michael, Star, and Laddie have all returned to their normal selves. And in one of the best endings ever, Grandpa gets out of the truck and doesn't say a word. He just walks into the kitchen, opens the fridge, and takes a swig from a bottle. The others are just looking at him because he's acting so strangely.
One thing about living in Santa Carla I never could stomach. All the damn vampires.
This is just a great movie in my book. And I'll admit that when I first saw this in the theater, I thought there at the end Grandpa was going to end up being some sort of vampire. Like he had just never fed on anyone because his soda bottles were actually filled with blood. But it turns out I was wrong. But what was he thinking at the end? How did he know he wasn't going to run over anyone else with that crazy stunt? Seems pretty careless to me. Everyone in the cast was amazing, except for maybe the kid playing Laddie. First, it's a stupid name, and secondly, he was just a creepy little kid. They all were super committed to their roles, especially Keifer Sutherland. He was acting his ass off in this movie. Now, 1987 was a great year for vampire movies. Not only did we get The Lost Boys, but we also got Near Dark. Both of these movies are still top-tier vampire movies that are still popular after all these years. What's your favorite vampire movie? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below to help grow this channel. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and hope you will come back for the next Back to the Future.